Welcome and thank you for tuning in to this episode of the podcast. Evidently, you're unaware. I am your host, Andrea, also known as the Successful Diva. Evidently, You're Unaware is a platform dedicated to shining light upon various issues, topics, circumstances, and people who influence our lives. The content being delivered is designed to bring relevant, thought provoking discussions not only into your peripheral view, but directly into your central vision. Why? Because it is no longer safe or acceptable to live in ignorance. We must have these discussions. So let's get smarter. If you have tuned in to any or all episodes of this podcast, you may have noticed that there is an intentionality in providing you, the audience, with information based on facts. From the episode titled The Autocracy Project to legislation being introduced on both the state and federal levels, the content of each episode has the propensity to directly impact your life. That's why I'm bringing it forth. It's why we're talking about it. In today's episode, the attention turns to Florida, the good old Sunshine State. I thought you'd want to hear an update on a few pieces of legislation that gained much attention during the current legislative session. Now, I won't take the time to go through all that has happened, but we are going to cover a few of them. Some of them turned out favorable, I believe, for the people, some not so much. So, the Florida legislative update begins. For context, I'd like to share that during this session, over 1,900 bills were filed. 255 of them passed, and 20 were signed into law. This legislative session has been called one of Florida's least productive sessions, and Floridians are paying for an extended session. I'm going to briefly go over one bill, SB, Senate Bill 7016, with its companion in the House, HB 1205. That bill was passed and signed into law on May 2nd of this year. This bill brings forth drastic changes to the initiative petitions proposing an amendment to the state Constitution. With this new bill into law, volunteers and paid petition circulators are now treated the same, which includes state registration and personal information on every petition they collect. It is now a third-degree felony for any Floridian who is not a registered petition collector to collect, deliver, or possess 25 petitions or more. Now, collectors must be a U.S. citizen and a Florida resident to collect petitions. Returning citizens without restored voting rights cannot collect petitions. Petition turn-in deadline. This is a huge piece of this new law. The petition turn-in deadline has been reduced to 10 days versus 30. That's a big difference. But let's look at a few other bills in detail from this legislative session. So I thought I'd start with giving you just an overview. 60 days. This legislative session originally was intended for the dates of March 3rd to May 2nd. It has it's already been received an extension of June 6th, and there is pending Senate approval awaiting for a few more weeks to extend the session to June 30th. There is some differentiating conversation in what Florida's budget shall be, and naturally, they've asked for more time. But on the agenda for this legislative session, typically all legislative sessions create new laws, amend existing laws, or obviously passing a budget, which is what the holdup is at this point. And those agenda items typically are born out of elections or what's necessary for the state to operate. So let me go over these few that I just chose. I thought they would make impact, and some people have brought them to my attention. So I wanted to provide insight as to where they have landed. When you go through these next few screens that I will show, you'll see that either a red dot or a green dot inside of the character that indicates who initiated this particular form of legislation. SB 848, HB 489 was the restoration of voter database, the voter rights database. This bill, with a red person inside of the sponsor box, was defeated. This bill was defeated, and what it would have done, it would have required the Florida Commission on Offender Review to develop and maintain a database which would assist returning citizens with navigating the process of voter rights restoration. It also would have mitigated confusion that was created over fines after voting rights restoration was passed overwhelmingly by the majority of Florida voters in 2018. So there was another stab at absolutely kind of clearing up the air and getting the process a little more streamlined for those who are returning citizens, completed their time and getting their rights restored. However, unfortunately, this bill, SB 848, companion HB 489, was defeated. SB 382, HB 365, this was dealing with the rent of affordable housing dwelling units. It was defeated. I won't take the time to go over those who sponsored or co-sponsored in each of the respective chambers of Congress at the state levels. You see them here on the screen, but it was defeated. This bill sought protection for affordable housing tenants. It wanted to prevent landlords who rent affordable housing properties from implementing rent increases until the end of the rental term of the lease. This bill sought to provide a clear definition of affordable housing and address the loophole allowing landlords to implement rent increases based on annual changes in Florida's housing rates. Again, this bill was defeated, and I'll bring your attention now that I've gone through the second one to the bottom caption where defeated means it has been indefinitely postponed and withdrawn from consideration. Indefinitely postponed and withdrawn from consideration. SB 1250, companion HB 1233, also defeated. This was dealing with political activity on school grounds, prohibiting faculty and staff at public schools from using email, office, and work time for political advocacy. This bill would have allowed certain political activities on school grounds and allows candidates, forums, debates, and the use of school facilities for certain political activities. It was defeated. So there is going to be obviously still some unrest as some of our public schools and colleges aim to have their different groups of persons forming and being able to have their voice heard. First green dot of this particular episode, SB 1330, companion bill HB 831. It was defeated, but why it's highlighted with a green dot at the sponsor box is because this is a good defeat. It was defeated. This bill sought to put some damper on elections and state-issued identification. It would have required more, and because it was defeated means that these things have not been placed into law, and that means this bill decided that it wanted to update statewide voter application to require additional personal information, such as the last 4 digits of the Social Security number, mandating proof of citizenship to vote. This bill would have required new voter registrants who have not voted in the state to provide specific additional ID to vote, and this bill would have required third-party voter registration organizations to affirm adherence to eligibility requirements during voter outreach and registration drives. So this is a good defeat because it would have hampered and done a few things as it relates to proof of citizenship and you being able to, or persons being able to register to vote. And I just popped this out here so that you can understand how the attack on voter laws has progressed since 2024. In the darker blue / dark purple, those states still have existing voter ID law. In the kind of caramel color you see on the screen, these states have either had new or stricter, meaning more against voter registration laws since 2021. They have enhanced. They've really gone after the voter and the voter process, voter registration process. And then the states in white, no voter ID laws. So there's nothing that's changed or gotten worse and or better in those states in white. And Florida, you see yourselves there on the map, new or stricter laws since 2021. Yeah, quite a few have done that, not just Florida. Florida legislative session SB 918 and HB 1225. This one was defeated. It's in green, as you see. It's a good defeat, in my opinion. This bill dealt with the employment of minors. This bill would have placed 16 and 17-year-old kids, employers would have been able to remove curfew and hour protection, allowing them to view these minors as adults. And curfew would have been amended to 10 p.m. on school nights. And then there's the 14 and 15-year-olds. Those would have had the right to have unlimited hours and days overnight and without breaks. And I'll just reserve a statement about this to this statement in short. We have done, meaning this country, have done a detriment to our immigrants in the country who do a lot of work, a lot of labor, a lot of things that we would not have needed an employment of minor law to try to implement. And I hope and pray that they will recognize that this is a country where everyone is to be viewed as somebody, and people who want to be here and work for their wages and pay taxes and do the things that you and I do should be allowed to do so. And in doing so, we would not have had to have somebody introduce SB 918 and HB 1225, Senator Collins and Representative Miller. Just putting that out there. SB 1258, HB 891, and then there was another HB 1381. I put those all kind of on the same screen here because they all dealt with forms of identification and the elections bill. This is another deep dive. It was defeated, thank goodness, but it would have really attempted to address an issue that does not exist. Non-citizens are already prohibited from voting. They were making a problem, trying to solve a made-up problem to basically then alienate others, which would have created an even bigger problem. But nonetheless, it was defeated. And this one, I'm glad, because this one would have eliminated student IDs as an acceptable form of ID for voting. And since it was defeated, we can move forward. It would have reduced early voting from a 10-day window of time to a 10-day window of time versus 15. So all of those things would have not been good as it relates to IDs and elections. I'm going to about wrap this episode up, but I didn't want to leave without making an important point as it relates Florida to the upcoming election. All seats in the House are up for election in 2026. Let me say that again with emphasis. All seats, all 120 seats are up for election in the House. So this moment goes to the people who claim to be fed up with what they're seeing, how they're being treated, who they might have voted for that's not delivering on what they said they would, who seems to be at the state level following along the lane of the hashtag 34 count convicted felon, Florida, all 120 seats in the House are up in 2026. This is the current composition of the House: 86 Republicans, 33 Dems, 1 vacancy. All seats are up for election in 2026. This is now the time to put all of that anguish, all of the so-called disappointment, I didn't vote for this moments, into your vote. Get those people out and let's move into the lane of democracy, equity, and fairness for all. In the Senate, Florida, 20 seats are up for election in 2026. All of the even-numbered districts are up for election in 2026. The current composition: 27 Republicans, 10 Dems, 1 NPA, and 2 vacancies. 20 seats. Again, another opportunity to gain a little bit of movement so that some sort of fairness and for the people governing can begin to resume in the state of Florida. It is important, ladies and gentlemen, that we take note and that we have the opportunity and we get engaged in what it is that's happening in your state and certainly at the federal level. It is important that you vote. It is important that you understand who you're voting for. I hope that this episode gives you at least some understanding of what was proposed, what was not, what didn't go through that is kind of favorable, certainly for people, what should have gone through that still will have a hurdle to cross down the line. But either way, we have to get serious about what's going on in your city, your state, and certainly at your federal level. So I thank you for tuning into this episode of Evidently You're Unaware. Remember, and I'm going to keep saying this until it sinks in, it is no longer safe to live in ignorance. This information is designed to increase your awareness and your consciousness of what voting means. It is more than just an act. It is your superpower to make changes on the things that you do not like. And you've got to get enough people collectively and on the same accord. And that sometimes may seem difficult, but it's really not when the people are the forefront of the discussion. Florida, now is the time. Now is the time to get yourself together. I'm going to go over here and look and see if I missed anything on this podcast, but let me tell you, now is the time. You have to get engaged. Now is the time to ensure you're registered to vote. Now is the time. And if you prefer to vote via mail-in ballot, now is to renew your vote by mail request by contacting your supervisor of elections office. Now, not tomorrow. Now is the time. In today's political climate, the excuse of I don't do politics while ignoring the paramount ramifications of not voting is intolerable. Politics, whether you like it or not, through the people you elect, are doing you. Don't forget, if you've got a topic or comment, inbox me at Andrea@strategicblueprint.info. Subscribe to this podcast at Evidently You're Unaware on YouTube, and follow me, Andrea, on Blue Sky at thesuccessfuldiva.bsky.social.
Evidently You're Unaware is a platform dedicated to shining light upon various issues, topics, circumstances, and people who influence our lives. The information provided should not be considered advice for legal, health, investments, or the endorsement of an individual or group. Neither the host nor the guest of Evidently You're Unaware is responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from using the information shared within this podcast. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Evidently You're Unaware.